We are beginning a new series today, John chapter 1, verses 35 through 42. Also Luke 5, 1 through 11. Don't worry, you don't have to memorize that, but if you want to open a Bible and follow along, that's great. Otherwise, it'll be up here on the screen. And while you're getting ready for that, let me just ask you to think about how hard it is to change, how hard it is to set a new course for your life. And I'm talking about even minor things like I want to get in better shape. Anybody who goes to a gym on a regular basis knows the worst time in the gym is January, right? January is when all those people show up for the first time in their little matching sweatshirt, sweatpant combo, and they don't know what they're doing, and they clog up all the good machines, and you're just like, fine, I'll just do push-ups over here in the corner. But you're fine because you know that in a month, maybe 6 weeks, 90% of them are going to be gone. And that's just reality because good intentions and hard work aren't enough to bring about life change. And that's true whatever your New Year's resolution happens to be. Maybe some of you would say, I think I'm in fine shape, but there's more important things in my life. I need to go back to school and finish my degree. I need to get out of debt. I need to spend less time at the office, more time with my family. I need to learn a new language or acquire some new skill or quit smoking or take care of myself better. There's all kinds of intentions we have. One year, my 12-year-old son, he's not 12 anymore, but when he was 12, he said to me, "Dad, my New Year's resolution this year is to play more Xbox." Doggone it if that kid didn't nail it, man. That is the most fully realized New Year's resolution I've ever seen in my life. But, these are all good things. Xbox is kind of morally neutral. But otherwise, really good intentions. I applaud you. I cheer for you. I hope you achieve them. But I have good news for you. And that is that the God who created the universe, everything that exists, also made you. And he didn't just make you, he didn't just say, oh, let there be Bob. He meticulously crafted you in your mother's womb, according to Psalm 139. He was like an artisan weaving a tapestry. You are unlike anybody who's ever lived, and you are made for a purpose. And his work in your life is not yet done. You know how you know his work in your life is done is you die. Until that point, he still has work he wants to do in your life. He still wants to change you. He still wants to work in you. So while good intentions, while hard work, while diligence and discipline won't get you there, he will. This past fall, before our staff retreat in September, we as a church staff read a book together called Practicing the Way, by a guy named John Mark Comer. Some of you are familiar with him or maybe even that book. He has an interesting way of framing discipleship. And I'm going to refer to this a lot this year because this is kind of our theme for the year. But, we talk about the term disciple. We say that a lot, and it's become sort of a churchy sounding word. We don't really know what it means because we only use it in a religious context. But Comer says that discipleship, a way that modern people can understand it better, is to think of it as an apprenticeship with Jesus. And we know what it is to say, I really wish I want to go into plumbing, or I want to go into carpentry, or I want to go into real estate, or I want to go into money management, or whatever. And you find the best person in that field, and you sort of yoke yourself to them. If they have a podcast, you listen to it. If they have books, you read them. If you're fortunate enough to live in the same town as them, you try to get together with them. If, God's grace, you're even able to work in the same company with that person. You're attached to the hip with that person. You follow their lead. You adopt their practices, and you pick up their habits, and you do everything you can to be like them. And what Comer says is that's what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. Is you don't just say, well, I'm a member of this church and I go on Sundays and I give my 10%. And no, those are part of it. But what you're really doing is you're serving as an apprentice to Jesus. You're seeking to do three things, really. It comes down to three things, and you're going to hear this a lot this year, so get ready. Be with him, become like him, and do what he did. So here at the beginning of the year, we're focusing on that first of the three, and that is to be with Jesus. If you really want to know someone, you have to spend time with them. If you want to become like someone, you spend time with them. And that's what it is to be a disciple. That's the foundation of discipleship, an apprenticeship with Jesus, is going out of your way to spend individual, solitary time with him. Now, some of you do this. I know that. I know that some of you have your time, maybe in the morning, maybe at lunch or whenever, where you just sit, you get in a quiet place, you open your Bible, you spend time with the Lord. And if you're doing that and it's working for you, good on you. Keep it up. But I suspect most of you don't. And not because I don't like you. It's just human nature. We have good intentions. We don't follow through. So like Alan said, we're starting tomorrow a challenge for the next 12 weeks, just to get you in this habit. For the next 12 weeks, we're challenging you to read through the 4 Gospels, not just on your own. We've got a reading plan. There's paper copies, actual physical paper copies on the welcome desk, or you can subscribe to my email devotional that comes out 6 days a week, and every day it'll have a link to that day's reading. It's like 1 chapter a day. You can do this. So that's our challenge. Read the 4 Gospels. Read the stories of Jesus. Get yourself into the pattern of interacting with Jesus and spending time with him. Meanwhile, we're going to be in a series about a man who walked this same journey, who went from not knowing Jesus at all to becoming a close disciple of his, an apprentice of Jesus who changed the world. You're going to see yourself in some of his story. So let's start that story with John chapter 1, verses 35 through 42. What we're going to do really here is we're going to see the first time this guy met Jesus, the third time he met Jesus, and then I've got 3 important questions for you. All right? First time, third time, 3 questions. All right? First time, John 1:35. The next day again, John was standing with 2 of his disciples. By the way, let me just stop there and say, since you're going to start reading the Gospels tomorrow, in the Gospel of John, which is the 4th Gospel, the guy, John, who wrote it, never names himself. He always calls himself the one who Jesus loved. So when you see the name John in the book of John, it's not John the disciple. It's John the Baptist, and that's the case here. So John the Baptist is standing by the River Jordan in the southern part of Israel. Pick it up there. He was standing with 2 of his disciples, and he looked at Jesus as he walked by and said, "Behold, the Lamb of God." The 2 disciples heard him say this, and they followed Jesus. Jesus turned and saw them following and said to them, "What are you seeking?" And they said to him, "Rabbi," which means teacher, "where are you staying?" He said to them, "Come, and you will see." So they came and saw where he was staying, and they stayed with him that day, for it was about the 10th hour. One of the 2 who heard John speak and followed Jesus was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which means Christ. He brought him to Jesus, and Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, the son of John. You shall be called Cephas," which means Peter. So the only stories about Andrew in the Bible, there's only 3. Even though he's one of the 12, even though today there are cities and universities and golf clubs named after him, there's only 3 stories about him in the whole Bible. We don't ever see him preaching or performing miracles, even though we know as a member of the 12, he did those things. All 3 stories about Andrew have this in common. They're all about him bringing somebody to Jesus. It's a pretty good legacy, wouldn't you say? And the first person he ever brought to Jesus was his brother. Now, let's talk about his brother. Simon, son of John, was a fisherman in the city of Capernaum. Actually, he and Andrew and their partners, the sons of Zebedee, James and John, they had a little fishing business. Capernaum is right on the Sea of Galilee. I mean, like steps from the water. Simon got his name from the patriarch of Israel, one of the 12 patriarchs, Simeon. When you read the Old Testament, the 12 sons of Jacob, the only story really where Simeon is a main character is a dark story. Their sister Dinah gets raped. And in retaliation, Simeon and his brother Levi slaughter an entire village of men. So he's a violent guy. He's brash. He's impulsive. As if his parents gave him the name and gave him the same character, Simon, son of John, comes along, and he also is very brash, he's unstable, he's unpredictable, he can be a little violent sometimes. And Jesus comes up to him and says, "You're not going to be called Simon anymore. Your name's going to be, in Aramaic, Cephas, in Greek, Peter." The interesting thing about that, 2 interesting things actually. First of all, that's an awkward way to meet somebody, isn't it? "Hi, my name's Mike." No, it's not. I don't recommend this for you and I, but you notice if you read the Bible, this is something God does over and over again. When God makes himself known to someone, he often gives them a new name, as if to say, the person you've been up till now, you're not going to be that person anymore, because now you've met me, and I'm in the business of changing lives, and so the name that you formerly carried won't fit your character anymore. I'm going to give you a new name. That's Abram becomes Abraham, that's Sarai becomes Sarah, that's Jacob becomes Israel, and now Simeon, becomes Cephas or Peter. Second thing about that name is it's not a name. I know we know people named Pete or Peter all the time, or Pedro, but before this guy, no one had been named Peter or Cephas, because it was just a word. It was the word rock. Again, my name's Mike. No, your name's Packing Peanut. Your name is, Left Shoe. Jesus is being intentional, though. He's saying, right now, you're moody, you're unstable, you're brash, you're out of control. I'm going to make you someone so fixed and set in the truth that nothing can move you. You're going to be a foundation that I can build on, that I can build a movement upon that will change the whole world. You're going to go from that to that. You're going to go from Simon to Peter. And really, the story of this man is the story of going from Simon to Peter. That's the journey we're going to walk with him in this story. Now, after this, interestingly, Simon, by the way, he's far from home right now. He lives in Capernaum. He's come presumably because his brother Andrew has become a follower of John the Baptist and believes he's a prophet. And Simon makes that walk. He makes that long trip. Imagine walking from here to Nacogdoches. That's about how far it is. He makes that long walk down to the south, crosses the Jordan, finds his brother. His brother introduces him to Jesus. What does that tell you? That tells you that for all of his brashness and all of his out of controlness, if that's a word, it's not, he's also a spiritual seeker. He's seeking truth. And he meets this man who, according to Israel's prophet, is the Messiah. And his response, from what we can tell, is to go, okay, and then go home. And the next time we see him in the book of Luke, he's still fishing. He's still calling himself Simon. Nothing presumably has changed. The next time we see him, we won't read this story. The second time he meets Jesus is in Luke 4, and it says that Jesus just sort of randomly, although we know it's not random, shows up in Simon's synagogue. The synagogue in Capernaum, just steps from where he lives, the place where his family worships on the Sabbath. Jesus shows up, preaches a sermon. A guy in the middle of the sermon stands up and starts screaming at Jesus because he's possessed by a demon. I'm glad that's never happened to me. And Jesus casts this devil out of this demon-possessed man. And so Simon says, well, come home with me. And so Jesus goes home with him, heals his mother-in-law, who's laying in bed sick with a fever, and that just leads to everyone in Capernaum showing up at Simon's door and Jesus healing those who need healing. That's the second time. Chapter 5 of Luke. That's what we're about to read. Notice, he's still going by the name Simon, and he's still fishing. Nothing has changed. But let's pick it up. Chapter 5, verse 1. On one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, that's the Sea of Galilee, and he saw two boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, which was Simon's, he asked him to put out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the people from the boat. And when he had finished, he said to Simon, put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch. Now, they've been fishing all night. Listen to what he says. Simon answered, Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. How would you feel if you worked the night shift and I showed up at your house just as you were getting off and said, why don't you go back to work? I don't think you're finished. This is what Jesus says to Simon. But notice, he's come to the point where he knows there's something special about this guy. He knows if he says something, I probably ought to do it. Because he says, but at your word, I will let down the nets. And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. So they signaled to their partners at the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both the boats so that they began to sink. I mean, how many of you have ever fished on Lake Conroe? How many of you have ever caught so many fish that your boat couldn't hold them all? This is what happens to Simon on this day. Look at his reaction. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And so also were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men." And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. Okay, what I'm about to say isn't in the Bible. This is just my speculation. I just picture between the first time Simon met Jesus over there in Bethany across the Jordan and this day by the shore of the Sea of Galilee, what I picture is that Simon's probably wrestling with who this Jesus is. And his brother's probably telling him every day, "Hey, when are you going to get it through your thick skull? John the Baptist is the only prophet we know. He says he's the Messiah. Why don't you believe?" And I picture Simon saying back to him, "I probably do believe. If he says he is, he probably is. I saw what he did for my mother-in-law. Saw what he did to that demon-possessed guy in the synagogue. Yeah, he probably is. But you know what, Andrew? We're fishermen. Let's stay in our lane, okay? The rabbis will tell us when the Messiah is here. The Pharisees will know it. The Sanhedrin will issue an edict. We'll know that it's not up to us to make these decisions. Let's just keep our eyes on the sea. Let's just keep catching our fish. That's our job." But on this day, this third time he meets Jesus, two things happen that have never happened before. And the first one is that Simon is filled with an overwhelming sense of his own sinfulness. And this is one of the surprising things you'll discover when you read the Bible. Because I hear people sometimes kind of casually say, "I sure wish I could go talk to God right now, and I have all these questions for him." And then you read the Bible and you find out that any time, whether it's Isaiah, whether it's Jacob, Moses, Abraham, whether it's John on the island of Patmos, whether it's Daniel, anytime prophet, blue-collar guy, whoever, anytime they experience the presence of God, the theologians call it a theophany, when God makes himself visible, the response is always the same. It's to drop to your knees and say, "Get away from me. I'm afraid I'm going to die." And this is a dumb illustration, but I'm going to use it anyway because it's the best I got. But you know how when you go to Walmart, everybody's in their pajamas? So let's say it's Saturday, you wake up late, you got some things to pick up, you're still in your pajamas, mismatched, fuzzy slippers, but you're fitting in fine because that's how everybody looks at Walmart. And all of a sudden, in the parking lot, you run into some friends who are just coming from a wedding. And they look good. And 5 seconds ago, you felt fine. You were in your element, everybody was the same, but now you feel really dirty. You feel like, I need to go home. I need to take a shower. I need to put on actual clothing. Now take that feeling. You know what I'm feeling? You know what I'm saying? This has probably never happened to you, but imagine it. Multiply that by infinity. That, I feel like, is what it's like to be in the presence of God. 5 seconds before, you think you're a good person, but then you're in the presence of absolute righteousness. And suddenly you realize, I'm not fit to live. You're trembling from head to foot. Listen to me. If God appeared to you right now, in whatever form he chose to take, whatever questions you think you have for him would flee from your brain in an instant. And all you would know is, I hope he doesn't kill me. And that's what's happening to Simon right here. He sees this catch of fish. He says, nobody can do this but God himself. The second thing he says, the second thing that happens for the first time is, for the first time, he's ready to chuck it all and to follow this Jesus. He's met Jesus. He's seen Jesus. He's even come to believe in him to a certain extent, such that when this guy says, go back out into the water, he does it. But now he's willing to say, whatever you say, I'll do. Wherever you go, I want to be there. And think about the sacrifice it took for Peter to make that decision. It's easy. It's one thing for you and me to say, yeah, I got saved when I was 9 years old and I got baptized and my parents were all excited about it. For Simon Peter, he had a wife. He may have had children. We don't know. He definitely had family. He had connections. He had partners. He had a business. If you owned a business in the ancient world, you were a step ahead of almost everybody. He's giving all of that up. And he doesn't know where it's going to lead or how it's going to end up. He walks away from it all. By the way, guess what else he walks away from? the best catch of fish of his life. And you might say, well, big deal. No, this is like to have two boats so full of fish that they're about to sink. That's like your boss calls you in tomorrow, and really, I hope this happens and I hope you tithe. But he brings you in and says, I'm giving you a 6-figure bonus today, and from now on, you're going to be second in command of the company. I'm grooming you to take over after I leave. You get to choose your own staff. You get to pick your own salary. And you say, yeah, never mind. I want to be a missionary in Timbuktu. That's essentially what Peter does here. If you did that, people would think you were nuts. I guarantee you, everyone who knew Simon Peter thought he was bonkers. He walks away from it all. He follows Jesus. And Jesus' response is, hey, don't be afraid. Don't you love when God says that? Don't be afraid. I got it. And then he says, from now on, you'll be catching men. What Jesus is saying is, I made you a long, long time ago in your mother's womb. I made you, and I knew this day would come where you'd have the opportunity to follow me. And because you've said yes, that destiny that I had for you is going to be fulfilled. That means the brash, impulsive, speak first, think later kind of guy you are now, always putting your foot in your mouth, always getting ahead of yourself, you're going to become something completely different. You're going to become a rock who's going to change the world. Right now, you think of yourself as just a blue-collar stiff, but someday you're going to write words on a piece of paper that are going to change the lives of millions of people that are going to be read for the rest of time. Right now, you're kind of small-minded and parochial, and you've probably never said a kind word to a Gentile, but in a couple of decades, you're going to go into the house of a Roman centurion and share the gospel with him, and they're going to be the first non-Jews to come into the kingdom of God. Right now, you're one thing, but I'm going to make you something completely different. From now on, you'll be catching men. Now, that's the call of Peter. That's where it starts for him. And we're going to follow that journey over the next few weeks. But let me ask you my 3 big questions. All right? If you're a note taker, write these down, because these are questions I really want you to wrestle with. Number 1, Jesus wanted to change Peter from an impulsive, unreliable man to a rock. Here's the question. What does he want to do with you? What does Jesus want to change in you? And you might say, well, I thought he loved me just the way I am. Absolutely. He also loves you too much to leave you that way. Well, I don't know. He's never told me what he wants to change in me. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is just sit back and say, what lingering sins are there in my life? What areas of character in me exist that I know shouldn't exist? Because if you're aware of them, believe me, he's aware of them. Are you someone who has a quick temper? Do you tend to say things you shouldn't say? Maybe you're a person who's a worrier and you're constantly anxious. You just don't have peace in your life. Maybe you love to gossip about others, or maybe you're kind to your coworkers, but you're mean to your family, or maybe you struggle with a particular addiction or a bad habit. There's all kinds of sins and struggles we have. Maybe you just don't have spiritual hunger. You come to church and your mind wanders and you leave and you haven't learned anything, and you try to open the Bible and it doesn't make sense. There's all kinds of flaws in this room. Believe me, I know, because I've got a list of my own flaws. My point is that you need to have your own list. Not of that person's flaws, your flaws. You need to bring them before the Lord on a regular basis. And if you say, well, I don't know what my flaws are, well, that's why God gave you a spouse or a roommate or parents, good friends. Most of all, that's why God gave you a Holy Spirit. So if you don't want to start a fight with your spouse or your roommate or your best friend, talk to the Holy Spirit and just say, please show me the areas where I need to change. What should I be working on, Lord? What should I be praying about right now? And believe me, he'll answer that prayer. How does Jesus want to change you? Second question. When Peter realized who Jesus was, he was willing to leave everything behind. So here's the question. Has that happened to you yet? This is the most important of the 3 questions. Have you come to that point in life where you left it all behind to follow Christ? Maybe you didn't have to quit your job. Maybe you didn't have to leave your home. Probably not, but you had to leave behind your old self. See, this is what a lot of people miss about Christianity. They think of it as a religion. In religion, all that matters is that you believe this set of doctrines and you follow this set of rules and you perform this set of rituals and you're in. And so when I ask people, well, what does it mean that you're a Christian? They might say, well, when I was 9, I got baptized, or when I was 12, I went through confirmation, or whatever the case may be. There's all kinds of ways that we as a religion have set up for us to mark time and these little roadway markers that say I'm on the path. But the question is, has there ever come a time where you left everything behind to follow him, where your life changed, where the trajectory of your life changed? Because that's salvation. You heard Christian talk about it in his video. So when did that happen for you? Maybe you don't know the precise day, but I bet if it's happened to you, I bet you know who your Andrew was, the person who most influenced you toward Jesus. And I bet you can name a period of life. It was when I was a teenager. It was when I was a young adult, when my kids were just born. It was when I was a little kid. When was it? And if you can name that time, ask yourself the question, how have I been doing since then? What's changed in my life since then? Has there come a time where I lost my zeal and my passion, and now I'm just sort of going through the motions? Because you can come home. You can get back on track with him. There's no probationary period. You just come back. You just get back on the road, and that can happen today. And for many of you, for some of you at least, I hope there's some here who would say, I haven't made that decision yet, but yeah, that sounds like something that I need to do. And maybe right now you're like Peter and you're like, I think there's something to this, but I'm not yet ready. Then come ask me any question you might want that might be in your mind. Or maybe today you're thinking, I didn't intend to do this when I came here today. I thought this was just going to be a normal Sunday, but now I know I need to take that step. I need to give it all. And today can be the beginning of a new life for you. Has that happened for you yet? Third question. Jesus told Peter that he was destined to change many lives. Now here's the question. What are you destined to do? What's your destiny? What's your purpose? I'll admit to you, I don't know my full destiny, my full purpose. I've made it to this point, and I don't know how many more years I have left. But by God's grace, one thing I can tell you is I know I'm on the right track. I know I'm headed in the right direction. How do I know I'm headed in the right direction? I'm not perfect. I'm still messing up on a regular basis. But how do I know that I'm still headed in the right direction? So when I was a little boy, I grew up in the country. Not in town, country. There were no neighbors. So it got pretty boring on weekends and summertime. And so if my mom was going into town for any reason, I wanted to go too, because there was a chance I might bump into one of my friends. So for me, in the summertime, H-E-B was like the place to be. You might run into somebody you know. And I can remember being 8, 9, 10, 11, following my mom through the cereal aisle, and I'm just sort of daydreaming, and I look up, and to my horror, I discover that the woman I'm following is not my mom. That ever happen to you? See, here's the scary thing. That happened to me probably half a dozen times when I was a kid. Never once did my mom come back and say, hey, come on. What does that mean? I don't know. But anyway, regardless, my point is, you're headed in the right direction if you're following the right person. Who are you following today? Oh, I'm following Jesus. I'm here in church, aren't I? Yeah. But a lot of people who sit in church pews are actually following somebody else. I don't mean they're practicing a different religion. I mean, the person they're modeling themselves after is some celebrity or some politician or some successful person, or maybe it's not a person at all. Maybe it's an ideal, the ideals of this world. This is what it means to be successful. This is what it means to be beautiful. This is what it means to be significant. Maybe I'm just following my own dictates and doing what seems right to me. But there are some of you, I hope most of you, who would say, however imperfectly, my life is bound up in following Jesus, the one who died for my sins, the one who rose the third day, the one who will judge me someday, the one who loves me more than I love myself. That's who I want to please. That's who I want to become like. That's who I want to pattern my life after. And if that's the case, I've got great news for you. If your life, however imperfectly, is bound up in following Jesus, you will become the person you were created to be. Nothing will stop you. You will make an eternal difference in this world. You will celebrate for all eternity the multifaceted ways that God changed the world through your life. And that's something to be excited about. And if that hasn't happened yet for you, it can happen today. So here's my thing. If you say, I'm following Jesus, yes, that's me, be with him. If you don't have a plan to be with him, grab one of those reading plans, subscribe to my email, whatever it takes, read the Gospels with us for the next 12 weeks, and then we'll go from there. And if you haven't yet started that journey, you haven't yet done that Peter thing where you get off the boat and you just say, Lord, wherever you go, I'll go. I don't want to catch fish anymore. I want to catch people. That can be today.